All in Sports Network. We love sports.
It is Thursday, March 20th, and day one of March Madness in the books. It is approximately 11:28 when we are recording this. About 8 minutes remaining in the Texas Tech UNC Wilmington game. But Jake and I are going to go ahead and start recording and basically give you game by game of kind of what we thought, what we watched, our thoughts. Maybe as quickly as we can, maybe a minute or two on each game. Get you out of here in about 30, 45 minutes, hopefully, and kind of go based on what stood out to us, and then what our brackets look like. But star of the day, Jake, has to go to Amir or Kahn from McNeese State. The student manager won the day.
First student manager to sign NIL deals. Multiple NIL deals, Insomnia Cookie, Buffalo Wild Wings, some type of, I think it was some type of betting website, all types of stuff. He had fans coming up to him. He has the cheerleaders wearing his socks. The players all love him. Dude is just he's a legend forever.
A legend. Now. I mean, Sister Jean, move out the way. Who are you, old lady? Get out of here, you old hag. It's Oricon. I mean, the studliest con since Genghis, I would have to say.
That's a comparison to make, but just one of those characters that only this tournament can make. And dude, even though some people
talking about that earlier today.
Just how special this tournament is. Because to me, even though some people could play, like, there haven't been any like super crazy down to the last second buzzer beater game. There's been some close games. And regardless, there's still been a ton of fun basketball. Yeah. And we'll get into it each game, but most games have had the other team, the underdog, show some life at the very least. And then maybe the other team pulls away, but still a very fun day of basketball to me. And to me, days like this separate the true March Madness fans from the fans who just only care if there's 15 seeds winning and buzzer beaters all throughout the day. That's just not how basketball works. I still think it's been a very entertaining day of basketball, and the evening games themselves have been a lot of fun.
Yeah. I think the schedule makers did a good job on this first day, giving us Creighton, Louisville, a 9-8 matchup to start the day off. And, it was a good game. I felt like Creighton obviously pulled away there at the end, but Louisville, they held their own for the most part and stuck in it. But, Jake, you have a take on the ACC, which I think it's aging pretty well. And that take was don't put an ACC team unless it's Duke past the first round.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't even say Louisville held their own. They made it look a little bit closer at the end, but they went down by like 20 in the first half. And never really actually made it a game. They pushed it to 10 or 12 here and there, but could never actually get it within.
I guess what I mean was like they didn't really give up, and they were always kind of trying to make that push, and it never felt as though Creighton was not in control, but it also never felt as though Louisville was technically like out of the game.
Yeah, and the crowd helped that for them, just because you get a little 4-0 run and the crowd's going crazy just because they were trying to cling on to anything. But it just showed that the fading the ACC won me some money. Great day of betting for me. Actually did better betting than I did on my bracket. I just figured out when I looked at my bracket tonight, I thought I picked a couple teams. We'll get into it when those picks come up. But I started the day 1-0. I picked Creighton. I bet Creighton. I didn't get the Louisville hype. I don't care what their KenPom ranking was or what the analytics say. Your analytics are going to be inflated when you play in a dog crap conference that is the ACC. Everyone's outside of Duke is bad. Just bad. Not even mediocre, just bad. And fading the ACC paid off.
How do you feel about Greg McDermott as a coach?
I've always enjoyed watching Creighton play. I like the speed they play at. They're a consistent tournament team, and I know you're asking for would he go to Texas. I'm pretty sure, because schools like Creighton that only have basketball, that don't have a football team, they spend money on their basketball coaches, and they take, I don't know what Greg McDermott's buyout is, but I think it's pretty substantial. And Texas, that's one thing I know Texas has already kind of said behind the scenes is they're not looking to pay a big buyout on a coach.
Yeah.
I'm all in on Will Wade because he hasn't, allegedly, he has not actually signed the deal with NC State.
Right.
So that to me is where Texas should pursue aggressively. But I would love Greg McDermott but at the same time, you haven't really seen him. It would be a big culture change to go from
that and what has he done in terms of a deep March Madness run with Creighton?
with Creighton. They're
Okay.
just never going to get.
Yeah.
They're never going to get the caliber of players to go to win a national title.
But yeah, they had two players with 20 or more points. They had Neal with 29, Ashworth with 22. They had 4 total players in double figures. But yeah, just an all-around good game for the Blue Jays, beating the Cardinals. They'll take on Auburn. We'll get into that game in a little bit, but that was the first game of the day, first game that I got wrong. So my bracket was not the perfect bracket out of the 24 million that were filled out and filed away on ESPN, although I didn't fill mine out on ESPN. But out of the 24 million that are out there, I did not have a perfect bracket after the first game. So, but Purdue, High Point, Jake, High Point, man, they were fighting there. They were fighting there for a little bit.
Yeah, it's always tough when you play Purdue because you're playing against about 9 players because of the officials.
Because
every game, it doesn't matter. I thought it was a Zach Edey thing. It's just a Purdue thing. It's just when I watched a single player get 3 foul calls in 8 seconds on High Point in the second half, I about punched my computer screen at work because not only did I have High Point in my bracket, bet money line on High Point. And also, I'm doing what's called a hijack tournament at my job, which is where you get randomly assigned a team from each quadrant. You have 16 people in it. And if your team covers the spread, you either move to the next round if that team won and covered, or you steal the other person's team. If you were if High Point would have covered against Purdue, I would have stole Purdue even if Purdue won if they would have covered. High Point didn't cover. They didn't win. All they did was tease me the entire game and then not be able to do either. But did show life. I don't think it ended up being like an embarrassing pick by me.
No.
They certainly showed life. They just couldn't. They would cut it to 3. They would cut it to 4. And then Purdue would go on a run, or there'd be about 15 foul calls on High Point in 2 seconds.
No, you're right, Jake. It's insane that Purdue gets the amount of calls that they get. It's almost, and God, they're just a boring team to watch. They're just not there's nothing exciting about Purdue to watch. They're just, it's not even fundamental. It's just they're slow. They're not really all that athletic. They're not really, they don't really show you anything that's exciting. Like
their dunks are boring.
Fundamental basketball is exciting for me. I love quick ball movement, decisive pass, very San Antonio Spurs. The Purdue is not that style of basketball. They're just boring. There's no other word to describe it other than boring. Their colors are boring. Their players are boring. They've got nothing exciting going on for them.
Their campus is boring. It's all dudes, and it's kind of like a A&M in the Big Ten almost. To a point, they're a little less culty, which is saying a lot about how culty A&M is, but that's kind of what I would compare it to.
Jake, Montana, Wisconsin. Montana was giving Wisconsin a little bit of a game in the first half. Gave them a slight scare. I don't think it was anything, of true concern, but Montana was holding their own against Wisconsin, and then Wisconsin ends up kind of running away with it, a 19-point win, 85-66.
Yeah, I appreciated that because I'd bet Wisconsin 16.5. And then Montana was giving a hard time. I was like, I'm still confident. Live bet them 12.5 because I saw the line was 12.5. So I got 2 wins off this game betting wise. But yeah, Wisconsin, I will say with how good BYU looked, that's going to be one of the premier matchups to me to watch this next round. I think that line's at about 1.5. That seems about right. BYU looked really good. Granted, I think Wisconsin's a lot better than VCU. I think a lot of people fell in love with VCU because of the name. Didn't really think about the stylistic matchup going up against BYU. That press style doesn't always work good.
And I don't know if people understand what BYU is doing as a basketball program. They're kind of turning the tide in terms of they understand they're never going to be a powerhouse in football, but the one thing that they can afford to be is a powerhouse in basketball. And they've put a lot of NIL, they've put a lot of resources into building this basketball program, and they're building something pretty spectacular. I mean, they've got the number one recruit in the country coming in the 2026 class. And they're spending, I think, about the sixth most amount of NIL money in the incoming class for BYU. And so this isn't just like your Jimmer Fredette BYU team that is just like kind of these underdog, no-name guys. They actually have some high caliber recruited players that are now playing there. And so, but yeah, like you said, away from the BYU game, Montana, Wisconsin. Wisconsin's fun. They're a good team. But like you said, I do think that BYU-Wisconsin game is going to be a lot of fun if Wisconsin starts out as slow as they did against Montana. BYU could definitely come away with the upset.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a close game, wire to wire. I think we're going to have a lot of close games in this second
round 2 is
round.
going to be a lot of fun, especially Saturday. Now that we kind of know what Saturday slate is going to look like. SIU Edwardsville versus Houston. This was never a game. Houston dominated from beginning to end. We can just move on. Auburn, Alabama State, Jake.
Alabama State showed life. They caused me to be one of the few bets I lost of the day. Great. I'm just going to keep saying it. Keep patting myself on the back. You got to enjoy the big days.
Hey,
and I had
Mr. March to the right of me right here is enjoy your day, because guess what? March has a funny way of humbling you. So enjoy the day.
But for tonight, it's January, February, Jake. That is the order of the calendar, because I'm probably going to lose this tech bet. I don't think they're going to cover. So I'm going to end the day about 20-6 on my bets.
That's a great day.
And that is a phenomenal day.
That's
especially considering
day.
All 6 of my losses were just 1 unit bets. I had all the games that I put more money into that I was confident in. I won big. I got a couple big upsets that we'll get to here soon. I'm just going to keep patting myself on the back. But yeah, Auburn, the big scary thing for them is they had some injuries. And Creighton is a team that if they come out and they shoot well, I mean, I do think there's a tendency for people to fall in love with an 8 or a 9 seed after the first round where they dominate or look really good, and a 1 seed kind of as sluggish. Everyone bets everyone bets and goes, oh, this 8 or 9 seed's going to beat the 1 seed, and then it doesn't actually happen. But Auburn has not been playing their best basketball as of late. That continued today. They had
Bruce Pearl was on fire on the sideline.
Yeah. I mean, they were sluggish. They had injuries. It was about the worst possible game they could have, because not only did they just not inspire any confidence in themselves as a team, but they suffered multiple injuries. I don't know. Those guys might be playing, but they'll be playing banged up.
Mm-hmm.
And you have a Creighton team who's going to be coming in sky high confidence and feeling like they have a chance to win that game.
No, Jake, you're exactly right. I think you had texted me. Auburn looks lazy. Like they're not the first ones to the ball. They're not winning the 50-50 balls. They're not diving on the floor. They're not, putting in that extra effort where Alabama State was. And that's why Alabama State made it look like it was a decent game in the first half. Now, yeah, Auburn came out and won by 20. But like you said, if they come out and play that way against Creighton has a legit chance of upsetting them.
Oh, if they play like they did against Alabama State, they will lose to Creighton.
Yeah. I mean, it would depend if they can turn it back on. March is a crazy, funny, weird tournament, but I agree. They would be in big trouble against Creighton if they come out and play like they did against Alabama State. Again, a 20-point win. I'm sure they'll take it, but definitely some things to work on before Saturday. Here's the big one of the day, Jake, a 12 over a 5. We talked about it in our pick'em game. You always feel like you need to take a 12 over a 5. Now, historically, that's never necessarily been backed up by fact, by history, but a 5 over or a 12 over a 5 always seems like it's the right thing. Well, this year, if you were a McNeese Cowboy and you rode the Amir or a Kahn train, then all aboard, because I've got him in my Sweet 16. I had him winning this game. I felt it. Now, they did let it slip because Clemson hit 6 straight threes in the final stretch and nearly came back and won this thing. But yeah, 69-67. McNeese was in control of this game the entire game, aside from that last final stretch from Clemson.
Yeah, it was what, 40-18 at one point?
Dude, Clemson had 13 points in the first half, Jake. That was also the lowest scoring output of any team in NCAA March Madness tournament history, by the way. Fun fact.
Yeah, I would hope so.
I mean, 16 seeds score more than 13 points in a first half.
31-13 at half, which, by the way, again, just going to keep patting myself on the back. McNeese money line also took a live bet at half for an over that easily hit. Great game betting wise for me, but also McNeese. I mean, I said it. We both said it because we both have them in the Sweet 16. We both said it before that they have aura. They have a vibe about them. And some people thought they're too popular of a 12 seed pick. Sometimes the popular 12 seed pick is a popular pick for a reason and just wins. Just like last year with James Madison. This was that case where they were a legitimately good team. Probably could have even been an 11 seed, really. Yeah. And Clemson was a very, very weak 5 seed. Again, fade the ACC. This was the perfect combination of factors to pick a 12 seed, where you have Clemson, who really wasn't that good. I mean, they lost to South Carolina, was one of their best non-conference teams they played, and they lost that game. I don't think Clemson makes the tournament if they're in the SEC. And they got just flat out embarrassed. I don't care what the final score says.
Yeah,
they got embarrassed.
Yeah, if they don't have that final stretch of 6 straight threes in the final 2 minutes of the game, this game was ugly and may have gone down as one of the worst performances from a 5 seed in the history of the tournament.
They got out rebounded. McNeese had more steals. McNeese had less turnovers. McNeese had 6 blocks. Clemson had 0. In every facet of this game, McNeese dominated them physically on the boards. They just looked like the better basketball team, which is what I thought going into this. This was not even a surprise to me. It was a little bit of a surprise how bad it was.
The fact that they won was not surprising.
No. And I mean, they dominated. It wasn't just a win. It was an obliteration.
Now, we talked about this next game a little bit already, but BYU, VCU, Jake, anything else you want to add on to it?
I mean, this was a really fun game to watch. BYU just had one big run that let them end up controlling this game. For a while, it's looking like this was going to be a game that came down to who had the ball last.
Mm-hmm.
But BYU
was a very well played game, very fun first half. Not to say the second half wasn't, but that's the run you're talking about came in the second half.
I think a lot of people are going to fall in love with picking BYU over Wisconsin. And what I will say is, stylistically, they matched up very well against VCU. They're going to be playing a completely different team in Wisconsin, because how BYU made their money against VCU will do them no good against Wisconsin, because they just beat that press. And VCU just stubbornly, it doesn't matter who their coach is, they just stubbornly stick to a press. For the last couple decades because of one run they had. But whenever you have a team that's beating it every time, you should probably back out of it.
Yeah.
And BYU just completely obliterated the press the entire game.
No, I would agree. And one thing, and again, we'll get to this game in a little bit, but you can tell who the legendary coaches are in the game and who are not. Bill Self, a great performance in terms of adjusting his team to what Arkansas was doing. And I think they played a 2-3 zone, 7 possessions out of the entire season. And in the second half, they just went strictly 2-3 zone for a good solid stretch of maybe about 7 straight possessions. And Arkansas couldn't beat it until they did. And then they backed out of it and went
because
back
they
to man.
adjusted because Calipari's a pretty good
Because
coach himself.
but yes, but exactly to my point. Yeah. And so, but yeah, I don't know why teams just like stubbornly will not change their ways whenever they're getting beat by that one thing. But yeah, BYU, a very good team. I'm very interested to see how they show up against a Wisconsin. I think if Wisconsin plays, not their best game, a little sloppy, obviously BYU has the talent to beat them, which is entirely, but I think if you're going based on both teams show up and play their A game, Wisconsin will beat BYU if they both play their A game. Gonzaga, Georgia, Jake, I'm very close to saying the SEC are frauds. I'm not there yet, but I'm close.
It's the bottom half of the SEC,
Which I don't understand why the bottom half got the benefit of the doubt and to begin with to get into the tournament.
Yeah, I mean Georgia getting a 9, Oklahoma
Texas,
getting
Georgia,
a 9.
and Oklahoma
and
did not deserve chances
Yeah.
to play.
I mean those teams didn't deserve to really be in. And I mean, other than that, who else from the SEC?
Maybe
played
Vanderbilt.
today?
We don't know how Vanderbilt played. We'll wait till tomorrow. But
I mean,
Vanderbilt,
Arkansas beat KU, so
Yeah.
Arkansas would be, I would say, the top end of the lower half of the SEC just because they ended the season so strong,
again,
and I think they deserve to be in.
I do too. But I think we will see the Mississippi States of the world. We'll see the Vanderbilts. We'll see these teams and how they perform tomorrow. And I think I'll come to a conclusion of whether or not the SEC was overrated and there was a little bit of a bias from the committee.
Yeah, I mean, the 3 teams I had or not, I shouldn't say issue because like I was happy Texas was in, but just from a objective looking at a standpoint, I didn't think they deserved to be in.
I mean,
I didn't really think Georgia had that big of especially to be a 9. And then with OU as well. And then I thought it was weird Arkansas was a 10 because they did so much. They were such a better team than Oklahoma.
I felt as though Arkansas was a better team than both Oklahoma and Georgia by a long shot, even.
I mean, if Arkansas is the 9 against Gonzaga, that's a much closer basketball game.
Absolutely, it is. And now I don't know if Arkansas wins, but
no, I'm not saying Arkansas wins, but I mean, I don't think
they beat
any
a
of the
7-seeded Kansas team.
I'll put it this way: I don't think any of the games the SEC lost today were a surprise.
No. But
I mean,
I wouldn't say Auburn looked tremendously good. I wouldn't say that Tennessee just looked fantastic against Wofford. I wouldn't say I think that's kind of where I'm coming from as a point of even your high seeds didn't dominate the way maybe some people were expecting them to.
Yeah, I don't care about that too much in March.
Yeah.
Speaking
of Tennessee, Wofford, next game up, 77-62. Again, Wofford gave him a little bit of a game, challenged them, but Tennessee did come out on top. They were the more physical team. They looked like they were in control the entire game. I don't know if Tennessee's a team that blows teams out. I mean, I know they had a couple blowouts on the regular season, but this is different. It's the March Madness tournament, so I'm not sure if Texas A&M, they're not a team that I believe is capable of blowing a team out. I think they're going to have to play close, gritty, grimy, knock them dead type games to win and get past their opponent.
Yeah, I mean, they're teams who just grind it out. Yes. And then if you catch them on a night where they're shooting really well, you're probably going to get the doors blown out.
You're in trouble.
Of you.
Right.
But if you're Tennessee, I think you're perfectly fine with today's performance. The game was never in doubt. Wofford never really threatened, not legitly. They just kind of kept it within that 10 to 15 point range.
They stayed in it. Yeah.
Tennessee just kind of coasted through and did what they needed to do to win. I think you're fine with this game. If you're a Tennessee fan, you're just like, okay, we just kind of took care of business. And now you got to play a UCLA team who looked pretty good today.
Yeah. And that'll be a fun game. UCLA Tennessee is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, that should be a fun game, and that'll give us obviously a good idea of Tennessee. I mean, once you get to the Sweet 16, that's where it starts to become a little bit more of your season's already been pretty good. Now, do you make it a great season?
And by the way, just to keep everybody updated, of all the games that we've discussed at this point in the day, I've only missed one game, and that was the first game, and that was I took Louisville over Creighton. Just so everybody
I
knows where we're at bracket wise.
so you know how I told you my bracket? I was like surprised to see. I think I had switched to BYU. Because I know I put Wisconsin over Alabama, and it didn't save. I didn't save my bracket changes, my tweaks that I made, because my betting, I bet BYU. My betting wise, I should have only missed one game on my bracket today. I missed 3 games.
I missed 2 games. I've got it, especially if Texas Tech ends up winning with 40 seconds left, 81-70. I lost UC San Diego, had them in my Sweet 16 after losing to Michigan today, which they almost won. We'll get to that game in a little bit. And then obviously Louisville over Creighton. I missed that one too. So those are the only 2 games that I missed in day one. I say that's a solid game. That's a solid day one pick.
Yeah.
For your bracket.
Yeah, no, I mean, even with the games that I guess didn't save on my bracket, missing 3, I'm perfectly. If I didn't lose a single Sweet 16 team.
Well, that's good. Yeah. Arkansas, Kansas, Jake. This was game of the day.
Yeah.
Maybe UC San Diego, Michigan.
Yeah, maybe UC San Diego, Michigan. I was trying to think of any. UC San Diego, Michigan.
Missouri.
I still want to put that at game. I mean, I put McNeese over that just because that's that was the biggest upset of the day.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, from an entertainment standpoint, just start to finish, Arkansas,
I think
Kansas
from a good
was
basketball standpoint, Kansas.
Yeah,
Arkansas.
I think both teams played really good games. Played to maybe not their ceiling, but both played to a very high level of basketball that they can achieve.
Legendary coaches, really good players on each side. I thought both teams didn't necessarily just shoot themselves in the foot with bad play and turnovers, and one team didn't capitalize on just a poor performance from the other team. It felt like both teams were really energized and really wanted to win this game. Calipari wanted to win this game. I think he'd been on a 3-game losing skid in the tournament of getting out of the first round.
He wants Kentucky to lose tomorrow bad,
and he
too.
wants Kentucky to lose real bad. And so do I. I've got Troy winning that game. So, but yeah. So, game of the day, in my opinion, I thought this was a really, really just well-played game beginning to end.
Yeah, I mean, like you had mentioned with the 2-3 zone change from Bill Self and just kind of both teams going at it, making their adjustments, making their changes. One team would go on a little run, but never could get up very much, and the other team would come right back. Was just a really well-played basketball game and has me really excited about the second round matchup with Calipari Patino going at it.
And Jake, like you mentioned before, man, just because there's not just a ton of buzzer beaters and overtime games and huge upsets of 15s beating 2s or 14s beating 3s or anything like that, that doesn't make it a bad day of March Madness tournament basketball. Like, there was still a lot of really cool moments that happened. And I don't know if we got, a Jack Golke Oakland performance from anybody who just went completely lights out crazy. But again, just really, I thought it was
or
a
Kahn,
good day.
maybe.
Yeah. Hey, when you can get an Oricon, you don't need a Jack Golke when you've got Oricon. But yeah, just God, I love this. I love this freaking tournament, dude. I love it. I love this tournament. I had so much fun today just keeping up with it. Although I had internet issues at the beginning of the day and I was getting pretty aggravated. I was actually getting irritable, upset with my phone and internet situation, but got it figured out and whatnot. But yeah,
still had 3 double-digit seeds win today.
Yeah, I'm with you. Yale, Texas A&M. Yale, Texas A&M controlled this game. I'll give it to them. I thought Yale was going to play a closer game to Texas A&M than they did, and I'm glad I stuck with my gut in choosing Texas A&M because of that. They were the more physical team. They won for the exact reasons why I thought they'd win this game.
Yeah, this game went exactly like you and I said it would. I mean, I originally had Yale and then I scribbled it out and I put A&M because I was like, this is a hater pick. And I don't I try not to bet, especially bet that. Like I bet A&M 7. Now I will say I would have been absolutely pissed if Yale backdoor covered this game and then made me lose my bet and never really threatened to win the game. I would have been furious.
Yeah. If
But
you're gonna make me lose the bet, win the money line and just win the game outright.
yeah, or at least make it close and make them sweat. A&M was. I don't think an A&M fan was ever at least well, none of them are rational. But if there was a rational A&M fan on this planet, they wouldn't have been sweating during this game. They had control of it. They didn't really dominate the boards like I thought they would, but they dominated the game physically. They had way more points in the paint. I think they had about 20 more points in the paint. They had several block shots. Yale didn't really have any. They still won the rebound battle, just not by as much as you would have expected. But
Jake, you made a good point when we were watching the Texas Tech game, and we'll get to it in a little bit. But Tech shot 30 some odd 3-pointers.
Well over 40 by the. I'll pull up the exact amount. That game's gone final.
When you're Texas A&M, or when you're Texas Tech, or if you're a school who's bigger, faster, stronger, a Michigan over a UC San Diego, you don't need to get cute and shoot outside shots. You don't need to play the analytical game. You do what Texas A&M did. You do what Tennessee did, and you just bully them inside, and you get good positioning, and you space the floor, and you get your best players some space down low in the paint, and you just let them score high percentage shots, and you just live with that. And that's where Tennessee did. That's what Texas A&M did. They knew who their opponent was, and they just got the job done.
Yeah, they didn't really do anything fancy. They probably hid some things they had planned for future rounds, and they went, we don't really care if we win by 30. We just want to win and not have to ever worry about losing the game. And neither A&M or Tennessee ever really had to worry about losing the game. Tech ended up, we'll get to that game, but they ended up shooting 46 3-pointers.
That's horrible.
That's the reason, and they only made 13 of them. That's the reason that they ever sweated about that game.
Yeah.
So only reason UNC Wilmington stay close. When you're the favorite and you're bigger, stronger, and faster, you just get to the rim and play physical, and you're probably going to control the game and still maybe potentially blow them out. But at worst, you're going to control the game and never sweat it.
Yeah. Drake, Missouri, a popular pick for a lower seeded team to beat a higher seeded team, a double digit team. Drake 11 over a 6, 67-57. Drake wins by 10. They advance. They'll play Texas Tech, correct?
Yeah.
And so
I have them in the Sweet 16.
Yeah. I thought this was a good game. Another solid, well-played game. Kind of went back and forth, but it felt as though Drake got the lead and then never let go of that lead once they got it.
Yeah, Missouri made a big run in the second half, and it looked like all of a sudden they were going to get control of the game.
Yeah.
And then it was Bennett Sturtz who hit a awesome running 3-pointer. And apparently he just does this sometimes. It's something he's known to do, where he's just kind of going forward, running, and it's like a fade forward shot. It's not a fade away, it's a fade in shot. And
it's like a little runner. It's a little Tony Parker runner for 3.
No, it's literally like a version of a runner, but a 3-point shot.
Yeah.
And he just sunk it. And apparently that's not like he always does, but it's something he's done multiple times this season. And that was one of the plays of the day for me. Should be a one shining moment as well.
One shining moment. Yeah. And we had a couple of one shining moments, and you better believe that Amir Kahn is going to be on one shining moment with his Buffalo Wild Wings boombox.
Yeah, and the socks from the cheerleaders, and Bennett Sturtz.
I think the Triton mascot will be on there for sure. That's a great
definitely
one shining moment.
Bennett Sturtz had 21 points in this game, 8 of 11 shooting, 3 of 3 from 3-point, including that running 3-pointer, and then you had Tavian Banks off the bench with 15 points. That's 36 of their points right there. That's over half.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Mizzou made some runs, but Drake they play a very slow style of basketball. When you look at possessions where the shot clock goes underneath 5 seconds, I believe Drake is either first or second in the nation in amount of possessions that happens. That's just the style of basketball they play. And when you're a team that is undersized, and not the bigger, faster, stronger team. That's a great style of basketball to play if you can execute it well. And for the most part, they executed it at a very high level in this game.
Yeah, and
31-3 on the season now is Drake.
I'd be very curious to see what the time of possession actually was. And I don't know, basketball doesn't typically keep those stats of in terms of like how long a team holds onto the ball compared to the other, but Mizzou is a get down the court. If you take more than 8 seconds off the shot clock, then you're holding on to the ball too long type team. And Drake is the complete opposite of that. And when you get to control the tempo and control the game like Drake did, that's when you get a team like Mizzou to only score 57 points in the game, where Mizzou's used to scoring 70, 80 points in a game.
Well, and Drake was an 11 seed, which is really high for a team that is Drake. Out of the conference they are for a reason. I said they are 31-3. They had wins over Miami, FAU, Vanderbilt, and Kansas State in the non-conference.
Yeah.
That was one of the biggest reasons I picked them. And Vanderbilt, they beat by 11.
Yeah.
They didn't just beat them. They handled them.
I mean, they won today by double digits. It's a 10-point win over Mizzou.
I picked them confidently for a reason, not because I thought Missouri was frauds. I just went, this Drake team's a really good basketball team. And this is a kind of a rough matchup for Missouri, I thought, unless Missouri forced them into a bunch of turnovers. And they weren't able to do that. And Drake managed to control the game.
UCLA over Utah State, Jake. I didn't watch a ton of this game because it seemed like UCLA had it in hand pretty early on. I did flip it on from time to time when the other games were at commercial. But yeah, I didn't spend a whole lot of time watching this game. UCLA seemed like they dominated and were in control, and there really wasn't many questions about it. And so we'll see a good game against Tennessee. That game I will definitely 100% be tuning into for the majority of that game.
Yeah, I'm first off really annoyed that it's Utah State on my bracket when I bet UCLA, and
what's on your paper bracket? Do you have Utah State on your paper bracket?
I think I have UCLA on my paper bracket. I'll have to go back and look, but I know that I wanted to pick UCLA. I'm sick this week, if you can't tell by my voice, and I'm going to blame it on that. But the betting side, I bet big on UCLA. I thought 5.5 was way too low of a spread. I didn't think they were going to do that to them. But yeah, this game was over from early on in the second half. It like you, I didn't watch much of this game. I'll get my first real look at UCLA on Saturday.
Yeah. St. John's, Omaha shooting pretty well in the first half. They played St. John's very well in the first half. I think St. John's was only up by 7 in the first half, something along those lines. And then they ended up blowing them out by 30 in the second half.
Only up by 5 at half.
Up by 5. Okay. See, I watched a lot of basketball. Gosh, my brain is fried. But St. John's,
guess what?
7-point game at halftime, ended up winning by 30.
Guess what, Tanner? We get to do this again tomorrow.
And then the next day.
Yeah.
And the next day. And then
because even Saturday and Sunday, you don't get the 4 games on at a time as much, but you still pretty much have basketball on the whole day.
Well, speaking of, Texas women's basketball plays Saturday night. So they'll play their first round game in Austin Saturday night. It's like a 8:45 tip-off. I was kind of annoyed at that. But anyway, St. John's, they looked every bit of the 2 seed in the second half, not so much the first half. But Omaha, they shot really, really well in the first half.
Yeah, they were just chucking it. And for a second, I was like, uh-oh.
Well, they went up like 7-0, did they not?
Yeah, they did. And it was a kind of a back and forth game for a little while. Then St. John's kind of went on a run to get the lead at half and then just blew the doors off in the second half. But had me at least going, okay, after this awesome day of bet, because I didn't really want St. John's to lose this game, to be honest, even though I typically always root for the Cinderella. I like St. John, and I kind of want them to go deep, and it made me sweat it for a second.
What do you think that locker room sounded like with Coach Pitino at halftime?
Probably not very positive. He didn't seem thrilled with how they were playing. Even in the post game, he said, if we rebound and play like we did today against Arkansas, we're going to lose by 30. And he said, if Arkansas is the team that I saw or whatever today, and they were middle of the pack to lower middle of the pack in the SEC. I'm glad we weren't in the SEC.
Oh,
So I'm sure he's already getting in all the vocabulary for the team
yeah.
to show up a little bit better, because they're going to have to play, if Arkansas plays like they did against KU, St. John's going to have to start better than they did against Omaha.
Jake, this was my Cinderella game. Biggest upset that I had on the day, aside from McNeese beating Clemson. I did have that, and I got that correct. But UC San Diego 65, Michigan 68, almost had it. Michigan was in control essentially the entire game, and UC San Diego, the Tritons, they made it a game. They came back. I believe they even took the lead for maybe half a second before Michigan drained a 3 and went back up by 2. Yeah, they tried making it a game. Michigan ends up winning by 3. And Texas A&M, Michigan, I have a feeling that might be a very sloppy, gross, ugly style game. And whoever can come out on top might be a legit threat in the Sweet 16, because it'll be a big game for whoever comes out on top of that 5-4 matchup.
Yeah, I feel like this side of the bracket could get real sloppy in the later rounds.
Auburn.
I still like Michigan State. I feel good about Michigan State. But
Michigan State's the cleanest team of all these teams, are they not?
I mean, they haven't played yet, but
maybe Iowa State, but I mean,
we'll see. I mean,
yeah.
I actually think Lipscomb's going to cover that game. I bet them plus 14.5 to cover, but I think Iowa State will win.
I have Iowa State winning, but I kind of like Lipscomb.
I have some prop bets on that game too, but yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this little mini quadrant within this big quadrant kind of works out, because I don't really know what to expect from Michigan against A&M, to be honest. Michigan looked great in the first half, and then I think they kind of just thought they were just going to be able to cruise, but UC San Diego just had to get used to playing against a team that had guys that were over 6 foot. They looked shocked. It looked like they were in the land of the lost with Will Ferrell, and
it was a horrible start to the game. And if they had started any better than the worst possible outcome to start the game, they probably could have won this thing.
Yeah. Though, to be fair, the reason why I said I didn't pick them was the exact reason they lost.
Yeah. Well, they came out and, like you said, they looked like they were shocked to see 2 guys that were 7 feet tall. And they were like, oh my God, their guards are bigger than our forwards. Uh-oh. And then they just kind of played that way until they realized, wait a second, we can play with this team.
Yeah,
but it was too little too late.
I don't know if they listened to Jay Wright's analysis during the halftime show and adjusted to what he said when they came out in the second half, but they just didn't have a good game plan out of the block.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't really have any game plan. I think they just thought we're going to play our game. He does such a good job. I'm so glad he's behind the desk now, but I mean, I love him as a coach. I would like him to be Longhorns sideline, but Jay Wright does such a great job. He's so freaking smart. Yeah. And kind of what he said was what San Diego did in the second half to make that a game, to cause me to lose my bet in that game, and Michigan still win. But yeah, that was definitely one of the top games of the day, though, because that whole second half was really entertaining. Mm-hmm. After kind of a dud of a first half, the second half turned things
you and I,
on.
we're like, should we go ahead and start recording? And they're like, wait a minute.
Right after we said, should we start recording, UNC Wilmington goes on like a 13-0 run, and UC San Diego goes on an 11-0 run immediately after we said that.
Yeah, and we're like, no, well, I guess we'll wait and see how these play out. Speaking of last game of the day, Jake, UNC Wilmington lose by 10.
We didn't do Gonzaga, Georgia.
We didn't talk much about it, but I kind of went over it.
I don't remember saying it, but it was a blasting.
Yeah. I mean, there was really nothing.
That was the worst game of the day. I just wanted to say that out loud.
Okay.
That was the worst game of the day.
Georgia Gonzaga.
It was 26-3, I think, to start.
Yeah. I didn't really want to talk about it, but Texas Tech, UNC Wilmington. Wilmington, they came back, like you said, went on a big run in the second half, tied it up. I think. Did they tie it up or get close to tying
I think they took the lead.
Okay. And then Texas Tech ends up winning by 10 with about 8 minutes remaining. They controlled the rest of that game. I I would say the game plan for Texas Tech is what caused them to almost lose this game. We already had mentioned the amount of three-pointers that they took. I just thought it was a bad game plan. And if they don't do that and they play a little bit more within their, I don't know if that's how they played all season long, just chucking up threes, but
I don't care if that's how
it,
they played all season long.
it just wasn't, it's not a recipe for success, not in March, and especially not against Drake coming up on Saturday.
Yeah, I don't really care if especially against Drake, who's going to limit the amount of possessions. If you're
Yeah.
taking threes on well over half your possessions, Drake will love for you to play that game plan against them.
Especially if you go 13 of 55 or whatever the hell you shot today.
And like you said, I didn't really watch Texas Tech much this year. I don't know if that's their typical play style, but I don't really care if it is, because you shouldn't that shouldn't be your game plan when you are the bigger, faster, stronger team. And just kind of looking at a couple of their last box scores, it does look like they just take a crap ton of threes every game.
Yeah.
But I just think that's a bad game plan in March against a team that you are better than. You are better than. The only way you're going to let them into the game is if you chuck a bunch of threes and you're not shooting it well. Guess what? They chucked a bunch of threes and they weren't shooting it well. Yes, they still won, but that game would have never been close if they were just trying to get to the rim every possession rather than shooting 46 3-pointers.
All right, Jake. Well, that does it for day one. We'll be back this time tomorrow, everybody, and
not on a work night, thank God.
Yeah, we will be we'll be posting same stuff tomorrow. I'm going to upload this literally right now, so you can watch this as a recap before we get ready for tomorrow's games. And we should have another excellent slate of games tomorrow, starting with Baylor, Mississippi State. And then we've got some of the high-low seeds, Alabama, Robert Morris, Iowa State, Lipscomb. That might be interesting. One I'm keeping an eye on is Colorado State, Memphis. I think that's going to be a very interesting game. That'll be an early slate game. But yeah, another great day of March Madness tournament for tomorrow, and we'll bring you all our immediate reactions to that as well. Well, for Jake Jimerson, I'm Tanner Carlson. You've been listening to your daily fix of all things Texas Longhorns right here on All In Horns, brought to you by Rogue Sports Network. As always, everybody, welcome.
All in Sports Network. We love sports.